Good morning. Tuesday, 7th of May, day 2, week 3. It's been pretty good. Different way today. I think we'll do a slightly shorter vid today to make up for the epically long ones. Everything seems to be in order. It's about 7:30 in the morning. Woke up a little bit later, but there again I went to bed a little bit later. I drank water, lay in bed, got up and out. Yeah. Again, I looked at my laptop, but it's that last entertainment thing. It's a habit I've probably got to break. So yeah, urban agoge. And today is technically a rest day according to the army fitness thing, but we'll see how I feel. Still tempted to do some push-ups and try a chin-up and stuff like that. Steep bit. Yeah. Still trying to get a few more habits sorted out. Certainly tidiness. You know, I don't want to go all, minimalist, because I've got some cool stuff that I want to do stuff with. I've got, equipment for projects that may be, years away from happening. Perhaps this week there will be some videos on tidying, or videos of me tidying, just to hopefully encourage you to do it. Maybe even a how-to. If somebody showed me a really good way of tidying, then that would be good. I'll go through here. Yeah, what to talk about. So I was in conversation with my friend in Australia last night, as he was on his woodland ramble. And this is after I'd watched a couple of very good videos from Yale University that were on YouTube about Greek history. And it sort of felt like it all coalesced. I'm sure there were other ideas that were thrown about in that conversation. He's a very smart guy. Knows a lot of stuff. He's a good, everybody knows a lot of stuff. So, but yeah, he's a good guy to talk to when you're musing, and I do that a lot, as you can tell. We were talking about the history of the Spartans and stuff like that. And I realised that, not that it makes a difference to the title of the channel, but I realised I might be rooting for the wrong guys. But didn't change the name, but it's a sort of like a bit of a shift, a little bit of one for me. And there's no getting away from, not fall down a ditch, getting away from the fact that militarily and societally the Spartans had it going on at a terrible cost. Understand? They destroyed the family structure, put a whole bunch of people at the top who were expected to defend that structure against all comers, which was the Spartanate, if you like. And then there are all these other people, not necessarily slaves, but that had none of the rights of being a citizen. So essentially the citizenry have extended rights, as opposed to your average bod that lived in Sparta. And the Spartans were, I mean, this is 2,500 years ago, easily. Like 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, when Sparta is formed and starts doing all its stuff. But so times were different. Might absolutely did mean right, no matter what anybody tried to tell themselves, and it probably still means the same today, even though we do this whole thing where we try and pretend it isn't so. I'm realising that it's probably a very bad place to film because the sun's behind me. So, yeah, let's do that. And it's not going to help. So, they're in this situation, and it has been described, given the enormous rights, power, privilege, money, all that sort of thing, that the Spartanate wielded over everybody else, that Sparta was more akin to an oligarchy, with a reinforced sort of set of principles where essentially it more or less didn't matter how much money you had. There you go. You were still bound by a series of laws that were ever more, how should we say, restrictive. Things you couldn't do, things you couldn't say, viewpoints you couldn't hold. And I got to thinking that it's kind of like now. It was a new thing in Greece. Bear in mind that, the concept of Greece as a nation didn't exist. But in that general area of the Mediterranean where they were like the top tech in the world, they're the best bronze, they're the best art and all that sort of stuff that they knew of. Obviously China was kicking off, and bits of Southeast Asia and India and all those places that nobody had ever been to. Civilization was up and running. But in large parts of Europe it wasn't. And this was the flaming beacon of civilization for those people at that time. Greece, home of the thinky people. And so the Spartans come along, and after absorbing a whole bunch of other tribal people, that's why you don't hear, after Sparta turns up and coalesces, you don't hear much of the Minoans or the Mycenaeans or anybody like that, because they're gone, absorbed by Sparta. Lots of those people became the helots, the working class or slaves of the Spartan Empire. And I don't think it happened all that often, but there was no real penalties for offing a slave or a helot. In fact, it was part of a yearly ritual where the young Spartan warriors would roam out into the countryside and kill a few people. So if they're prepared to write down for future history that they were killing a few people, I'm willing to bet loads more atrocities took place. So wealth and privilege. But that said, it's 2,500 to 3,000 years ago, and that sort of thing was going on all over. So yeah. And as a result, sorry about the sun, the Spartans were outnumbered by the people that they ruled. It was actually a class of society by about 10 to 1. Imported workers and stuff. Basically there's the Spartans and then everybody that isn't a Spartan in Sparta. And they were heavily outnumbered. And there had actually been several uprisings. I'm moving very cautiously now because I'm seeing other slip marks from previous people walking down this slope. Yeah. So there had been a number of uprisings, and some of those were nearly very successful. Certainly a couple of them went on for many years. But and it was kind of like, that's the reason they had the agoge. The system of teaching people like a community value, whether it's valid or not, and making sure that's instilled and it's inviolate. Wasn't permitted to speak against it. If you hadn't completed the agoge, you weren't a Spartan, really. You could have been born a Spartan to Spartan parents, but if you didn't complete the agoge, you lived a pretty miserable life as a man in Sparta. So that got me thinking. Maybe the reason that the Helots rose up is because they developed their own training system. I mean, we live in an oligarchy now, pretty much. We're at the whim and beck and call of the very powerful, who change laws as they see fit. It really was a climb. That was like 1 60-degree slope down and 1 60-degree slope up. Have a look down here, because I've not been down here. I'd remember that slope. Ooh. That's like an 80-degree slope. It's like that's a pretty savage drop. So it may be. Obviously, I don't need to change the name of this course. But if I called it something like the agoge of Sparta, we'd have a problem. But given that it's urban agoge, my stance on it can change. What if the Helots and the other people in Sparta had the same sort of education, the same sort of community devotion that was inspired by the agoge, that was, in inverted commas, enjoyed by the Spartans. They didn't enjoy it, but they got a great deal of rank and privilege from it. And that got me thinking about, well, does that thing exist in the modern world? And being English and part of Britain, we got schools that do that to kids for the wealthy all over the place. Cold showers, early morning runs, hazing, quite a lot of bullying. Some kids being used as servants by other kids. That stuff really happens. That's a thing. And then, some of them go on to Sandhurst and become sort of like military officers. Some go on to Oxford and Cambridge to learn to be politicians. So maybe I shouldn't couch. This is all learning experience. It was a Yale lecture by the guy who's an expert in ancient Greek history. It was worth watching. I'll see if I can find it. I'll put a link down below so you can check it out. But it's just a very interesting form of history. It's like, an outnumbered minority holding off against a majority of people. I could end up going for miles here. I'm going to turn around, otherwise I'll be 5 miles out and I'll be tempted to ramble at you for ages. So my point is this, in a very Ronnie Corbett round the houses kind of way, is that the psychology of why me and hopefully you and other people out there are doing it and getting fit and learning stuff, acquiring skills, becoming mentally more tough, and certainly getting more done with our day. All those things have got like a base benefit. You're going to be healthier, you're going to live longer. And that's what wealthy people do. They educate themselves for their entire lives. They don't suddenly get to a point where they go, I'm educated enough, I don't need to learn anything more. Yet we're encouraged to. There's there's been a long period of sort of like, that's it, you're a miner, that's it, you're working in a shop, that's it, you know, and an expectation of doing that forever. And it takes out, it sort of ruins our ability to think for ourselves. You know, you've got a secure job, keep holding on to it. You know, wealthy people have the power, and if you're really at the bottom of society, like you're on medical benefits or something like that, which, you know, UK being, compared to a lot of the rest of the world, fairly socialist, and those benefits are a holdover from a socialist government, and they're always trying to ruin them. The NHS is going down. You know, they're messing with the benefit system, so it's impossible to live on benefits if you really can't work. So yeah. So we, you know, I feel a little bit like a helot. And the interesting thing is, when they, you know, when those people do go to university and they're learning how to lead, they take, you know, a surprising number of them will say study classics at university, and there's a reason for that. You study classics, you learn how to govern from people that were living 3,000 years ago, because the techniques and the style and the skills are all exactly the same. A good example of how people are spoken to and how it hasn't changed is if you watch a TV series like Rome in the, I think it's the second season, it might be the end of the first, where our sort of upper working class hero, Lucius Vorenus, who was a centurion, becomes a prefect and then has to go out into the streets and tell the people how it's going down and what the news is and what the government wants them to do. He's taught to make hand gestures, very specific hand gestures, on, you know, convincing body language, like very, very overt theatrical hand gestures that trigger things in humans that are like pre-language. And, you know, watch him being told how to do that. And then, here's the interesting bit, go and watch Donald Trump giving a speech. Same hand gestures. You know, a lot of American private school, you know, fee-paying schools say, have debate teams. And they're taught to use those hand gestures in that debate because it's so effective. So, and we know that the Romans got the skill of rhetoric and oratory from the Greeks. So that's like 3,000 years that people have known exactly how to talk to the peasantry and how to convince them of almost anything. Ooh. See, this is an easier path. So yeah. So there's that. There was another thing. What was the other thing? Oh yes, yeah. Right. So if you haven't been convinced that there are things that we can do, attitudes we can hold, ways we can vote, ways we can be organised as humans to prevent this happening, sort of like a reverse Sparta. You know, if the working classes are dominant, which in a democracy theoretically they should be, and you know, you had a party, had like a working class party. That should be most of us. But in a kind of, we do the work, we get to vote more cohesively, then you really could make a difference. You know, and I think that difference is beginning to be felt in the US, where you've got you know, brand new members of their House of Representatives, and they are shaking things up. They're asking questions that the American people didn't have the answers to until they asked those questions. I'm going to have to run down here. It's just too slippery. I'm not looking forward to it. That is the only way to do that. Yeah. Back down by the river again. I do like it here. So yeah. So ordinary people asking ordinary questions that that are meant to be understood. They've got so into the rhetoric and their ways of speaking to each other that essentially, if you watch the goings on the Senate floor or the House of Representatives, a lot of the time you don't even know what's going on, and they're always alluding to things, whereas you get a few people in there that want to say things in as plain a set of speech as possible. You need ordinary people. I mean, the Spartans tried it. This is what will make it look less cool, in that the Spartans had ordinary Spartans elected to a kind of court where, even kings could go on trial. But the representatives that were calling the shots on this were only going to be the representatives for a year, and the people in power were going to be there for life. Muse on that, if you will. So the second thing, in that the concept of us having pensions, human beings having pensions, is a very Western one. If you really want to hit back against the government, but you don't want to lift a hand to do it, you don't want to, start finding out more about politics, start, seeing if there's someone that represents you and move towards that, because you've got all this new energy and all this more thought capacity that we have now, that we've been doing this course for 2 and a bit weeks, and I'm feeling a lot more energised and capable. And I thought I was pretty capable to start with, but I'm really, really liking eating healthier. I'm really liking getting some exercise and getting more time in my day to do stuff. I'm producing up to an hour of video a day, which I would have thought impossible, on a work day. It's not even my day off. I'm doing a full shift tonight. So yeah. So the thing that you could do, getting to the point, is just live longer. If you've got a state pension, or you've got a pension, and you're a normal working class person that's eaten crappy food for their entire lives, that smoked, drank, done drugs, worked all hours, done stupid things to their bodies, not got enough exercise, and you get to 65, which is the nominal retirement age, and the government has to hand over some money to you. You want to piss them off. You want to piss off the wealthy people of the world who are invested in hedge funds and pensions and financial services and stuff like that. Live longer. That's all you got to do. Live longer. That's it. Be in good enough shape so that when you retire at 65, you can be a massive pain in the arse to the state. You can form your own political parties because you'll have all the time in the world. You'll be fit as anything. You'll be training other people to become fitter. And then you can do what you like. But even if you didn't do any of that, just live longer. Think about it. If you've got a pension and it pays you, let's just call a livable wage £20,000 a year, just for instance, and you live 2 years after you retire, and you've put in £30,000 or £40,000 into it in your entire life, right? And then you end up living till you're 95, and you've only taken about you've only taken about £40,000 out of that pension, and you live another 30 years, you're taking £600,000 off them, £500,000, probably more than you paid in. So, if you want your vengeance, if you want to make things difficult for the people that really call the shots in your life, live longer, do this course, get fit, come up with your own exercise routine, eat well, and you win. That's all you got to do, because it's not just you. If you manage to make it a persuadable thing, then it's everybody, it's millions of people. So if you're costing them £600,000, 10 of you are going to cost them 6 million. 100 is 60 million, 1,000 is 600 million. See what I'm getting at? 2,000 is $1.2 billion. And I think this is why when you show people how to eat right, or you cut down on meat and you get a whole new lease of life, this is why it's not part of every school child's education. Because if we live longer, that's a bad thing. So yeah, 2 things to take away. The agoge, how I look at the agoge has changed, and maybe we should look at it from like an education system for the people that weren't Spartans. You know, that'd be good. And we're not Spartans. We're 3,000 years later. It's just an interesting concept where you train hard and you know you're that much more dangerous. But I think if you train reasonably gently and you stay in shape, you're just going to live for a much longer time. You know more about nutrition than any generation before or since. You've got the internet, you can find this stuff out. You can look at what constitutes a balanced diet. You can look up what... You don't have to go and find a sensei to become this wunderkind person that that is like an athlete. You don't have to be an athlete. You just have to be in better shape. So yeah, if you're angry with your government, or you're angry with the people who have all the money on the planet, like I am, the best revenge is to live as long as possible and to show other people how to live as long as possible. Yeah, and I think I'm going to end it there. I think I've ranted for long enough. I'm going to have a sit down. But yeah, thanks for watching, and take care.